everyone, Sabrina here, designing for Not Too Shabby today. I'll be using this new stamp set called Bouquet of Happiness, and I'm going to start by stamping out the large bouquet from the stamp set onto a slimline rectangle panel. I'm going to stamp it out with Memento gray flannel ink. I'm going to stamp it once on the top left corner and then again on the bottom right corner. I'm going to rotate the stamp just slightly so that it doesn't look too similar to the stamped image on the top. I'm using my Misty here because I am stamping on watercolor paper. I am planning on doing some no-line watercoloring. Here I'm showing you my second card. I just went ahead and stamped that bouquet right in the center of an A2 panel. And we're going to start by coloring the slimline. And I really wanted to create a dramatic background. So you can do this with your inks. I personally didn't really want to fussy cut, and plus I didn't have any masking paper. So I'm going to create the background using my Zig markers, which might seem like I'm using a lot of ink, and at first I thought I would have to, but the majority of the background was created with my water brush. You can see here I'm really adding a small amount of dark green Zig marker ink here. I'm going in first with my darkest green, then I'll go over the darker green with a mid-tone, and then a final lighter shade of green over the mid-tone. I added the dark marker around the actual bouquets as well as around the entire panel. And the markers that I used I will have listed in the video description. I did write them down this time. And I actually really like how this background turned out. So here I'm going in with my second darkest color, just extending the color more towards the center of the panel. But as you can see, there's still quite a lot of white space. Zigs are quite pigmented, so you really don't need to add too much watercolor to the panel. And I am adding the markers on dry paper, so I did not mist it. This is completely dry. All right, so now I'm going to bring in my lightest green, but all three of these are fairly dark. I definitely wanted to go for a more dramatic dark background so that my flowers would stand out. And once I'm finished adding that lightest color, I'll go in and blend all of them together with my Wink of Stella water brush pen that I filled with gold perfect pearls. So there is a slight gold shimmer in the background that I really, really like. And like I said, you can achieve a similar look with your distress inks if you just mask out the bouquets and focus the darker ink on the edges of the panel and make it lighter towards the center. But I do like with the Zigs that you, one, get that watercolor look. It is a little bit splotchy, but I'm going to add to that artsy vibe with splatter later on. But the inks will give you a much smoother look. But I do like also with the Zigs that you can add that dark color right up against the bouquets because the brush is so fine, you can add a lot of details. So I am going to color in my roses with my Zigs. Felix is going to pop into the video for a couple seconds. I mentioned in my last video that he likes to steal my Zig markers and my Copics, so he's very interested in my markers on my desk right now. But eventually he leaves, and the way I colored these roses in was I started with my darkest color first, so I'm going to go for purple and pink flowers. And I'm just following the lines that are on the stamp to add my darkest marker. And I'm basically just outlining the image, trying to, in a way, create an outline for me like I would if I had a black outline. And for me, when I no line color, it's easiest to start with my darkest marker. I feel a little bit less intimidated knowing that there's an outline there for me. Now I'm going in with my lighter marker, and I'm just going to use 2 markers for each rose. I'm going to add some more definition and contrast to these roses when I go in with my color pencils. So I'm mainly using my Zigs to map out each petal so that I know where to add my dark purple pencil to really, I guess, make the image more sharp, as if I did stamp it out originally. So I'm now going over the 2 purple markers, blending them together with my water brush. You can see I have a paper towel, and pretty much for each petal I am wiping off the tip of my brush because I do want a dramatic highlight. I find that with no line coloring, I really like to add more contrast and more highlights to really make it look like what it's supposed to be. So if you start over blending your colors, you might turn the image into like a blob. So I think it's better to do some more dramatic highlights than you typically would, just so that you can really see that it's a rose, and you can always go back in and make things darker, blend things more later. So here I'm doing my pink roses now, and I'm going over the dark pink now with my mid-tone, and then I'm leaving quite a bit of white paper still showing, and that's where I'm going to add my water brush. Again, wiping off that tip of the brush for every 1 or 2 petals. When you wipe off the brush, you're going to maintain that bright highlight. If you kind of start going over the entire rose with the water brush, which is what I typically would do with a black outlined image, then that's when it will start to look like a blob, like I was mentioning. So definitely take 1 petal at a time. And some people even will color 1 whole petal at a time. For me, I am adding my darker color first and then my mid-tone, and then I'm going over with my brush, but I'm still taking it 1 petal at a time. I'm still looking at individual petals as opposed to the entire floral. And I think that's what's most important when it comes to no line coloring. I'm obviously not an expert. I've only done this a couple of times. I definitely this year want to try to keep doing it more. And I do recommend starting with flowers. That's pretty much what I've done. I'm brand new to it as well. So flowers are nice because the petals are normally pretty small. So you can't add in a whole lot of detail, but you are putting in enough detail where you can differentiate each petal and really learn the technique. I find that large animals or solid stamps that don't have a lot of detail are more difficult for me to no line color, and actually don't even try to attempt it yet. So I think flowers are a really great starting point. So I did add some yellow to the 2 smaller roses, and then I don't really know what these flowers are, but I'm going to treat them kind of as baby's breath. So I'm just adding a little bit of shading with my gray zig, and I'm not even going to go over that with the water. I don't want to take a chance that either the pink, purple, or green will mix into it when I add the water. So I just left it with the gray. So as I mentioned, I wanted to kind of make these roses more sharp with my colored pencils. And because colored pencils have a sharp point, you can add even more detail. So I tried to find colors that match the zigs that I used, and I am using a dark and a light pencil, but I'm mostly using that dark pencil just to go over the outline of the roses. I'm not doing a whole lot of blending here like I did with the watercolors. The pencils are more to just add that definition back to the roses and also add a little bit of contrast. You definitely don't have to do this. I think with that large pink rose that I'm working on, you don't really need to do it, but especially the 2 smaller ones, you're going to notice a difference when I do one of the purple flowers at the bottom. I'll show you a side by side, and then you guys can determine if the color pencils are worth it. For me, it didn't add a whole lot of extra time. I knew that the focus of this video would be on no line coloring, so I really tried my best to really practice the technique, and I think that the pencils did make a difference. So for the larger petals, I am going to pull in that slightly lighter pencil, but for the most part, the watercolor is still primarily showing as opposed to the pencil. I'm not going over the entire petals with the pencils. So I do believe that this stamp set is still available at the Not Too Shabby shop. It was included in the Valentine box that has since sold out. So I'll just have the stamp listed below. I think it's a great one to have if you love to color. I did enjoy coloring these roses a lot. They're really pretty. All right, so now I'm going to do one of the purple roses just so that you can see a difference, because I did notice a difference particularly with the purples. And like I mentioned, I'm really just going in with the darker pencil to add or to darken the outline of the rose. Okay, and here I'm going to show you that the rose over to the left is a little bit more watercolory, obviously. So if you like that look, if you like a more painterly look, don't go with the pencils. The pencils are just there to add that detail back in, but here you can really see the difference. So off camera, I finished the rest of the roses, and I want to show you how I did the background for the A2 card. Again, I'm going to use 3 shades of dark blue Zig watercolors, and I really enjoyed creating these backgrounds because I don't gravitate towards really dark colors like this, but I knew that the backgrounds would be really pretty if they were super dark. And again, I'm not using a whole lot of ink here from my marker, or I guess it's not ink, it's watercolor, I think. So that's all that I added. The rest of the work is done with my water brush. So I'm just squeezing the barrel. You do need quite a lot of water to move that pigment around. So I'm not sure if I mentioned, I did stamp everything on, what is it? Strathmore watercolor paper. And I think it's cold press. So you can see at the bottom here, I don't have very much pigment to work with, so I'm really squeezing the barrel here to move the pigment downwards. So I love that with the zigs, you can really spotlight the stamp that you're working with by going right up against the outline of the image. I did decide to add gold splatter to the A2 card as well as the slimline, but for the A2 I did not cover the flowers. For the slimline I decided to cover them, and I just used some scrap pieces of paper to do that. And I added quite a lot of water to this Gonze Tomby gold. So it's not a super bright gold at all. It's very watered down. But when I tip it to the light, it adds a really pretty shine. So I wanted these flowers to pop out even more. So I'm going around the edges of the image using my white gel pen, and I'm just adding like little speckles. I think this added quite a bit of like magic to the background. I'm super happy with how this turned out, and I'm creating pretty small dots. Some of them I'm making a little bit larger. And I'm like concentrating the dots more along the edge of the bouquet and letting it fade out with less dots as it gets closer to the center of the card panel. So I'll do the same thing with this A2 card panel, and then I can start to decorate, or I guess finish off these cards. So I die cut this love word die that came in that Not Too Shabby Valentine box. I used this in a recent video and I could not find it on the Not Too Shabby website, but if you have any kind of word die, this would work really great. So I did layer 2 loves that I cut from 110-pound white cardstock, and then my third love I cut from gold mirror cardstock. And to go under that word die, I stamped out Love Ya Bunches from the stamp set on a white stitch banner. I gold heat embossed it. And I love the gold embossing, the gold mirror, and the gold splatter. It all kind of ties in together. And then that's pretty much going to complete this slimline card. For the A2, I stamped I Miss You, That's All from the stamp set onto a curved banner. And included in this set, I think it's by Trinity Stamps, you get the 2 tails of the banner. So I'm going to glue the tails flat onto the panel, and then I'll pop up the curved banner to add some dimension. But you could make these flat, I mean not flat, 1-layer cards. You could just stamp I Miss You, That's All with gold embossing powder and call it done. But I love to add just a little bit of dimension. So to accent both of these cards, I'm going to add some gold sequins by Trinity Stamps. I've been using these a lot in my recent videos. So because this panel had a lot of splatters on it, I didn't add quite as many sequins. I just focused them around the sentiment. So I decided to just glue this slimline panel directly to a slimline card base, so there's going to be a white border all around. I love matting my panels, you guys know this, and the white really makes everything pop. So that's going to complete my first card. And then for my second card, I'm just going to mat it again onto my card base. I am adding lots of ATG tape because I did add quite a bit of water, especially to this panel. So yeah, that's going to complete my 2 cards today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know which card you like more, and if you haven't yet already, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you're notified when I post my next video. Alright guys, I'll see you next time. Bye!